Greetings, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. That's right. A little after 11 o'clock here, Saturday morning. Hope everyone is having a peaceful and enjoyable Saturday morning. Thought I'd take just a chunk out of the morning here and do a little bit more translating and rejoining our kind of discussion, our working through St. Cyril on his commentary, his kind of reconstructed commentary on Psalm 50, according to the Septuagint numbering. Psalm 50 on David's great psalm of repentance. I hope I hope this kind of exercise is of benefit to someone out there. We've done, I think this is the sixth video, usually around an hour long each. One was a little bit shorter, but try to, just making our way through this commentary that's been reconstructed from the patristic chains. And I noted last week, I think last stream, that in some of these comments, I was reviewing Theodoret, a contemporary of Saint Cyril there in the 5th century, early mid 5th century, and his commentary on the Psalms that's been translated in whole and published in whole by in Catholic University of America Press, the Fathers of the Church series by the late Robert Hill, and seeing a lot of connections between these fragments that are being attributed to Cyril and the commentary of Theodoret. So again, no surprise there, but it's good to keep in mind that we're probably getting a blended kind of commentary here. But I think in some of we're rejoining now on verse 7 according to the Septuagintal numbering, which of course reckons I think the Psalm 50 has an especially long superscription. That counts as verses 1 and 2 in I think the standard Septuagintal numbering. Verse 3 would begin the psalm proper. Have mercy on me, O God, according to thy great mercy, as we've seen. Depending on your, like I alluded to that one essay that talks about Psalm 50 verse 5, okay, according to the Septuagint. So that's a kind of reckoning of the numbering that doesn't treat the superscription as numbered verses. So looking here at the Orthodox Study Bible, they reckon the verse 1 as for the end, a psalm by David, and then verse 2, when Nathan the prophet came to him at the time he went into Bathsheba, so that'd be verse 2, and then verse 3, have mercy on me, O God. Then of course on the more academic side, there's the New English translation of the Septuagint. I'm covering that with my hand there. By Oxford. So let's see how they render the numbering here. It looks like they number the superscriptions. Yeah, so verses 1 and 2 would be of the superscriptions there. And they actually give both numbering schemes for either to confuse us or to help us, depending on your perspective. The more liturgical kind of Psalter here by Holy Transfiguration Monastery, the blue one, they don't number the superscriptions, so they also don't make a big deal of the numbering anyway, because of it's a more liturgical kind of text. So they just, for a little bit of handy reference, will put these little small number. Every 5 verses will be marked by a little red number there. So you kind of keep a little sense of where we are in the Psalms. vis-a-vis the numbering of verses, but again, because it's a more liturgical type of psalter, it's not like it's not for, say, devotional purposes or whatever, kind of certainly not academic study, but the numbering is deprioritized, we might say. So a little kind of just getting our feet wet here as we dive back in. Let's pull up the text again. Start. And this verse, again, I think as we alluded before, just briefly, is one of the most important verses as regards the church's teaching on ancestral sin, or original sin / ancestral sin, right? That kind of question. And so let's actually, just as maybe we should do a paragraph here, and then and then we'll pull up the rest of the psalm text for verse 7, just to see what, because as we see, there only that first line is quoted here, at least in the commentary. So let's make our way through here, starting on verse 7. Ilugar en anomias sinaliphthin. So for, behold, in that we talked about this word before, used at least once before, lawlessness here in the dative plural, so governed by the preposition en. So in lawlessnesses, right, kind of be a little clunky to render it that way. So in iniquities or in trespasses, transgressions. What does the the NETS, New English Translation of Septuagint, just kind of smooths over the plural and just renders it a singular. So in lawlessness. For look, I was conceived in lawlessness. The Orthodox Study Bible says I was conceived in transgressions. Let's see what the Holy Transfiguration Monastery Psalter says. For behold, I was conceived in iniquities. So iniquities, transgressions, or just kind of to simplify it, lawlessness. Kind of a collective noun, I guess, would be the sense, right? Although it is a not inconsequential necessarily, the use of the plural. But let's this first fragment, which is definitely paralleled in the Theodoret commentary. I was just scanning here this morning, just check that out. So reading through here, tuto velegi uk ati physiki I tis amartias energeia atimoritos gar an in al oti to evoliston ti phisi si keklirote. Let's stop there. So it or he, legi, right? Third singular active, from lego, to say. So he or it, depending on if we want to think of the David as the speaker here, or the text, scripture, it. He or it says this. I'm going with more the personal. David says this. Uk ati physiki itis amartias energeia. Not because ati here is taken in that not so much in a relative clause, or not so much in a relative sense, but more in like this causal sense. Not because physiki itis amartias energeia. So not because now jump. So go to our article there. Energeia, the energy, the operation of sin, the sin, literally, right? The sin, and we have to supply an is here, not because the operation or energeia of sin is natural, physici, and then a little parenthetical statement here. We see the on, so we're in a conditional kind of clause here, and the to be verb, third singular here, for it would be, right, this conditional, it would be atimoritos. We literally, timoria is like punishment. Alpha privative, not punished. Right? So impunity in that sense. If for it would have, I'm kind of smoothing out a little, it would have impunity with the conditional if that were the case, if so. So if the operation of sin, the energeia of sin, were something part of our nature or natural, then it would be something that couldn't be punished, right? And this is so important, right? It gets back to a whole patristic account of sin and evil, the privation account of evil, that because God is good and God creates all things of his own free will, right? Not out of necessity. God is good. God creates all things freely, not out of necessity. Therefore, all things by nature must be good, right? Naturally. As created by God, all things are good. So that's immediately eliminating all these dualistic kind of heresies. The Gnostics, that attributed the created realm, the physical, material, sensible created realm to an evil God, the evil God of the Old Testament, so called, right? Whereas Christ comes as the revealer to reveal the true, the Most High good God, and then give us that knowledge so that we can make our reascent. That all we need to know is that we're actually spiritual people trapped in a material body, and all we need to do is really free ourselves of this material body and reascend back to this pure spiritual existence, and that's salvation, of course. Completely. That dualism of spirit and matter, so characteristic of the Gnostics, later the Manichaeans, that particularly I think in the 4th century and into the 5th century, St. Augustine, of course, is a lot of his work is dedicated to refuting that almost cropping up again of the Gnostic heresy in a different form, but this dualism, this fundamental dualism of matter and spirit. So, which would implicate God in the creation of evil. If matter is bad by nature, then God is the creator of all things, then God would be implicated in the creation of evil. Right? So our this kind of constellation of God is good by nature, therefore God can only create things that are good by nature. And God creates not out of necessity, but out of love and goodness, freely. And God creates out of nothing, ex nihilo, right? So there's no middle term between God as creator and creation. Right? There's no you're either on one side or the other of that divide. That this constellation, therefore, evil is a privation of the good, right? It has no independent substance or quality. It's a parasitic reality, or a turning away from the good, a separation from goodness, which comes from our free will, right? We can of our own free will break communion with God, who is goodness and life, and thus descend back to this this nothingness from which God created us of our own free will. We can do that, right? But that is not a property natural to us. So, all right, very important point. So I'm belaboring it a bit, but kind of what is behind this one little sentence we're seeing here. You know, it's a profound and complete theology of God and creation and nature, right? What is natural, that stands in direct contrast to a lot of, frankly, later. Certainly, we get into the Reformation, and some Calvinism certainly starts to embrace a bit more of a dualistic view of these things. It starts to sound a little bit, or not a little, frankly, but I'm trying to be generous here. It seems to start to reapproach some of these dualistic heresies that we see in the early centuries of the church. So sin is not natural. It is not a natural operation. It is a distortion, or a turning away of, or a misuse of the natural. So very important. So all right. If something is natural, one cannot be punished for it, right? So and so he's again, this, if sin is somehow bound up with our very conception, right, that could be read in a kind of deterministic way, right? Oh, I was conceived in sin, therefore I'm bound to sin. God can't punish me, right? It's natural. So he wants to say, no, that kind of a deterministic reading of this psalm verse, a very important psalm verse for a whole range of Christian belief, not least of which baptism of infants, right? Is he wants to shore up that or exclude certain false readings from this outset here. But so al ati to evoliston ti phisi si keklirote. But so that ati again here in the sense of because. So he says this not because the operation of sin is natural, but because to evoliston ti phisi si keklirote. So I'm taking this here as the subject of the verb. So we have a third singular, looks like a perfect imperative, right? Not imperative. Third singular, perfect indicative, middle passive, right? Ending there. So but because ev oliston. So if we look that up, we would see something. I don't think I looked it up here in the. So let's quick turn to the Patristic Greek lexicon, the Lampi. See if there's any. It's always good to check. See if there's a few. Even if it's an LSJ, Liddell Scott Jones, there might be a little bit more context specific glosses offered in PGL here. And that looking here, ev oliston, a lot of words with that ev prefix, right? The good, something good or well. So ev oliston. Okay, and I'm not seeing. Went over a little too far. Oh, evolistos. Right, there we go. All right, unstable. So what did I have here? I said slippery, something slippery or unsteady. Right. Unstable, easily slipping. Those are the two main, the two glosses given, and then a second with just one usage given for smoothly gliding. So behind that we have ev stuck on this olis tho root, right? So pertaining to slipping. So taking this noun as a kind of substantive, right? Because the reality of, that the thing of being slippery or unsteady, the reality, what is slippery or unsteady, the reality of being slippery or unsteady, has been co-inherited, right? Sig klirao. So in the perfect there. So has been co-inherited together with nature. So the propensity to fall, the kind of instability that characterizes our post-lapsarian, after the fall condition, is not part of nature, but it has been inherited together with nature because of ancestral sin. So going along here, Nika de homos gnomi keponis al uk anagki kratite diato av texusion. I'm not sure. This could be read a couple different ways as far as the subject, right? What is the subject of this verb? So I think it's a third singular. I think it's a present. There were a few, put it in the parsing tool, and there were a few possibilities that came up. So I'm taking the, it could be either, the subject to be either this slippery thing, right? This slippery quality, this unsteady reality. It could be even the operation of sin, right? This other, that would be a possible. And then, so if this is a third present active indicative, so it conquers whatever the whatever the implied subject is here. It conquers amos, all the same, I think is the usage here, or all the same. So even though it's not natural, this slipperiness, the operation of sin, and or the slippery, unsteady reality of our that's been co-inherited with our nature, conquers all the same by gnomi keponis, by dative here, right? By will or opinion, and by toils or labors. But again, another qualification here, but al uk anagki, but not by necessity does it prevail, kratite, which has that sense of control, prevail over, a sense of have rule, control over, or prevail over. Dia, in the accusative here, diato, because of texusion, because of free will or self-determination, right? So, again, preserving this, frankly, again, a sort of anticipation of the make sure you can see my, good, all right. Refutation of total depravity, right? Frankly, right? That even though, our nature is compromised by this kind of this slippery reality that's been introduced, this unstable reality that's been introduced, the operation of sin, and it conquers over us through our will, that in the sense of a deliberative will, gnomi, right? Opinion, will, and labors or toils, the difficulties, the difficulties of life, we might say, the trials, travails of life cause us to stumble or lead us to stumble. but it does not negate our free will in the matter, right? So we don't eradicate free will with some doctrine of total depravity that would, in effect, eliminate our agency and thus responsibility, which would make sin a natural thing, a kind of natural operation that God couldn't then punish us for. So, this is very. I'm going slowly through here. This is raising a lot of very important theological themes that are consistent in the patristic, in the early church, right? I mean, this is just this is the consistent witness of the church on these matters. So very important that we wrestle with this in this context, right? That in a verse that could sound or imply a determinism, right? Whether this is from, I think there's again some definitely Theodoretes in here, but then it's not exactly a direct quotation of Theodoret. So it might have some Cyril and Theodoret, but the point being it's the consistent witness of the church. All right, so let's move along. Legien thean kei en Babyloni kata tinas pros theon. So here we have this is, I think, an optative. We have the on, so pointing us to either an optative or a subjunctive, that conditional sense. So, so, and then our subject here, E. So, E and Babyloni. So, those in Babylon might or would also say legien, according to some, katatinas. In this is could be read in a couple different ways. I'm reading it as a possible, like some interpreters, some commentators might also say, right, or might, according to some, this sentiment in Psalm 50 could be attributed or kind of put in the mouths of the exiles in Babylon who are suffering for the sins of their fathers, right? So let's see exactly what they might say to pros theon, to God, right? Those in Babylon, according to some, might say to God, "I dikas me." Sorry, there we go. I have to highlight it and then read it. Okay. "I dikas me apetise vuli on eplimelisa ise orasi ketus proionus is proteste." So here's my take on this. So we have the if, E, and then vuli, that's second present singular. So you, if you want it, if you wish or want to, so eteo with the op, so apeteo has the sense of demand. So if you want to demand from me, dikas, in the sense here I think of retribution, on eplimelisa, of the things I erred or sinned, isse, against you. I think that's how to read that there. Is as against, to you, sin to God. So he's treating this like a quote, right? So hence I put the quotation mark over here in the English side. Ora si ketus proionus is proteste. Ora si. We have to sort of provide an it is here. It is time, or the hour, the season for you. Also, is proteste tus proionus. So I'm taking the four ancestors, the forebearers, right? The goneo, for that's like parent, right? Parents. So the ancestors. It is time for you also, or it is the season for you also to. So I'm taking this as like the subject, or the object of the infinitive, or maybe better, it's the time for you also to bring them in, to bring the ancestors into, what do I say, to exact payment also from the ancestors. So this, East Praso again. I think we saw that earlier. Kind of always a how exactly to render that. So we could go back to lexicon, but I don't want to take time right now. So you can look that up if you're so inclined. Just so it's time for you also to exact payment from the ancestors. Udegar ekini evgnomones ofthisan. For those ones, so ekini, for those ones, they, the ancestors, did not, did not, so for those ones did not appear, so orao in the, I think that's aorist passive here, so third plural aorist passive, to be seen and thus to appear, right? They did not appear evgnomones, of sound mind, right? Ev again, good, and then gnomones, so to be wise, to be of sound right mind, to be of sound judgment. So for they did not appear to be of right mind. So the implication, we are suffering for the sins of our ancestors, the forefathers here, as we sit in exile, right? So in that, spoken in that way, for behold, in iniquities I was conceived, right? I'm in Babylon not because of something I've done necessarily, but because of and if you're gonna, God, if you're gonna be righteous, right? This kind of, again, this theodicy question: how does, what is the place of personal responsibility, personal sin, in light of this either national covenantal reality, right, of the previous generations of Israel having activated the covenant curses, and then that accumulates and affects subsequent generations, and then writ large in the story of humanity as a whole with Adam and Eve. So what is the matrix, or what's the framework of accountability and responsibility, and thus judgment, and given that complex reality? So I guess the quote continues here in effect. So tropon un tina, tin ton pateron agnomosinin eklironomisa. There we go. Got to get the accent right. Eklironomisa. Ke ex ekinon to amartanin episirome. Tropon untina. So tropon, mode, way, fashion. So in a certain way, then. So in some way, then, tropon untina. Here we have first person aorist. I have inherited the folly, the foolishness, the lack of sense, right? We have evgnomones here. They were not of sound mind. Now he's with the alpha privative. So I have inherited the foolishness or lack of sound mind from the fathers. Ton pateron agnomosinin. Ke ex ekinon, and from them, infinitive here, to amartanin, the reality of sinning, or the act of sinning, the infinitive, episirome, I am being dragged to, right? and from them I am being dragged to sin, to the act of sin, to the reality of sinning. So in that way, again, the exiles are wanting to offload responsibility. So he's tapping into, of course, a conversation even among the prophets between we see it in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Does God in fact, according to Deuteronomy and Exodus, does God in fact visit the iniquities of the fathers on the sons, the subsequent generations? And there's an interesting kind of qualification of that takes place in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. We could go into that, maybe do that later, but where we might say there's a movement that a movement within the prophetic word to say no, or not that there isn't the reality of generational sin, but that generational sin cannot be used in such a way to obviate or to say, oh, well, I have no responsibility in this matter, right? So it's no, we are judged because of our own sin. So, but that it's a very all that to say again, it's tapping into a very important, even intra biblical conversation about this question. All right, now this, I think we definitely, with this verb, in my work on Saint Cyril, his on the worship and veneration, spirit and truth, he uses this root. So I think I'm pretty confident we're in the wording of, for sure, of Saint Cyril here. Though both of those previous two seem to be certainly the Theodoret is woven in there. So all right, so let's see what we have here. Ethos tis agis ek miliseste theon ke kalin is eleon diapliston men oson est ote phonon plin ke dia yetu kategorin epigeste tis enusis asthenias ti anthropo physi. So we have to supply, this is ethos, custom, or practice. We have to supply an estine, an it is. So it is the custom for the saints, tis agis, for the saints, or of the saints, to maybe I misread that initially. So with this kind of middle passive, it is custom for God to be propitiated by the saints. Maybe that's the better. I think that's a possible reading as well. It is the custom for God to be this ek intensifier in mealy has softening, right? So in that sense, propitiating. Let me look up here, which is an interesting. We're kind of that whole question of propitiation and how that connects to this ultimate discussion of atonement and models of atonement, punitive models, penal substitution, that kind of thing. But looking for the root here. Relating to gentleness or softness. So it is the custom for God to be made soft or propitiated by the saints. That's one way of reading it. Kekalin, and to call, is eleon, to mercy. Let's say it moves to an active part or an active infinitive here. That's what's kind of. That's why I was inclined to read this as it is the custom of the saints to propitiate God, and to call to mercy. To call implied him or his mercy. The apleistone. So we jump this kind of a. This we have the genitives here, plurals: pleistone, oson, phonon. So through many multitudinous abundance of such expressions, phony sounds, voices, expressions, esthote, oft times, right? So we call on God, the saints call on God's mercy and propitiate God, soften God through many such expressions as we find here in the Psalms, right? In the Psalm 50. Plin, and oftentimes, esthote. Plin, kedia yetu kategorin epigeste tis enusis asthenias ti anthropu phisi. And through, so kategorin, to that sense of to bring into accusation, to accuse, and then two infinitives stuck together here, to hasten, to be eager, and through being eager to accuse the weakness, the asthenias participle that is exists within, enemy, to be in, to be within, t anthropophisi, that exists within the nature of the human. So the nature of man, we could say. So that's an interesting kind of, it's maybe taking it to a level of a pattern, right? This is how, and he's going to then show us in other Psalms where this is the pattern. So it's the, we might say the pious rhetoric of the penitent, right? To soften God, to propitiate God, call in His mercy, while at the same time bringing to mind human frailty, human weakness, right? In a mode of self-accusation. So, esti un accuse voonton. So this is, I think this is an infinitive here, akuo in the infinitive. This is, to smooth it out to, this is what we hear, right? This is what we hear then with those crying, or of those who cry out, voonton here, genitive, plural. Mnisthiti atticus esmen. Remember that we are dust. Anthropos osi kortos imere avtu. And there's no and there, but his days, man, comma, his days are, supplying is to be there, are as grass. So Psalm 102. Kepalin, and again, mnisthiti tis mu hypostasis. So remember, what is my substance? Of course, this term will come later to have very important Christological application, right? The hypostatic union, but certainly in Septuagintal Greek, it is kind of an equivalent to the Latin substantia, right? The substance, to stand under. So, which of course will be part of what contributes to the Christological, the difficulty with terminology, East and West, right? So ousia, sub essence, versus uh, hypostasis and substantia, right? Anyway, um, Paul uses this word here, and in Hebrews as well. The substance of things hoped for. Hebrews 11 there. So, yeah. All right. Where are we here? I was going to quote Job. Enargesteron, tuto tithis o tlipathestatos Iov anephoni prostheon. So let's find our subject. We have O and Eov with this really interesting adjective. It's either comparative or superlative. Can't remember I think it is superlative. The most patient, and there's an LSJ definition, and then there's an entry in Patristic Greek lexicon too, which is a little bit more pertinent to, or a little more in sync with this usage here. So I think the LSJ was in the realm of wretched. So here it's in the sense of patience. Yeah, so the most patient Job, who, so in participle, nominative singular participle modifying Job. So the most patient Job, who put this more vividly, enargesteron, more vividly, anephoni, announced to God, anaphoneo, to speak forth, to announce to God. And I smoothed it out a little here. Sometimes you get participles and main verbs in English. It's just easier to smooth it out in a way that doesn't keep that exact syntax. So the most patient Job puts this more vividly when he announced to God, or put this more vividly. I uk osper yala me imelksas. Highlight the whole thing. Etirasas de me isatiro, therma que crea me enedisas, osteis de que nevris me eniras. Question mark. Osteis de que nevris me eniras, zoin de que eleos ethu par emi. So I'll just give the rendering here. Or have you not pressed me out as milk, and have curdled me like cheese? Have you clothed me with skin and flesh, and with bones and sinews? Have you threaded me? You have set life and mercy for me, perhaps. I'll have to look at that. I think that's what the versions were, or the translations were saying. So he's drawing in these other Psalm and Job texts as illustrations of the kind of mode that David is adopting here in Psalm 50. So, tosuton thiti kenin diaton prokimenon stikon ipodiluste famen. So jump all the way to the end. There's the first person plural. We say that such a thing, tosuton, such thing, indeed, now through the verses at hand, is being suggested, right, or indicated. So, all right, let me quickly pause here. I will be right back. So we were, so that ipodilao. So dilao to indicate, to make apparent, ipo under, right? So to suggest, to indicate under, to suggest, and the use of the middle passive there. So here would be a true passive. We say that such a thing is being suggested, right? Indicated in a suggestive way, through the present verses, the verses at hand. Very important. Let's do one more, maybe two more lines here, and then we'll pause for a reflection and then depart, as it were. Av tin gard imon tis yeneseos tin arkin udika ripu philosarchias yeneste physi. Let's pause with that. So it is saying, or he is saying, it says. I have to jump. See the main verb there at the end of the sentence, just like here, famen, physi. He or it is saying, and because of that, we have to use like a that, a relative, just to get into the it. He is saying that. Avtin. So now we're going to look for what else is accusative feminine singular. We have jump over here, teen arkin. So when you have the noun with so we have a noun with the article and then a avtin pronoun with it. That like intensifies it, right? The very thing. So he is saying that the very avtin tinarkin, the very beginning, imon tis yenesos, so of the beginning, or generation, or creation. Yeah, creation's probably not the right, or I think I put that in the sentence there, or in the translation. He's talking about generation. So but this yenesis can be used in reference to creation. So like the created order. So our Genesis. Let's just transliterate it. So he's saying that the very beginning of our Genesis, Yenesthe, udika, did not, or let's just say did not, Yenesthe, come about, happen, come to be, vika ripu, apart from ripu philosarchias, apart from a stain of love of flesh. Okay. All right, let's keep going. All right. Timios men gar homologumenos oyamos que pera diabolis to crima paratheo. This is an adverb, so we have homologeo as the root there, so confession. So by common confession, we could say it's an adverb. Marriage, oyamos, is supplying is timios, honorable. So he's in effect quoting Hebrews 13 there, that marriage is honorable and the marriage bed is undefiled, right? And the tokrima, the matter, the reality of marriage, right? Beyond pera diabolis, is beyond accusation as far as God is concerned, with God, paratheo. So marriage, you know, following apostolic warrant, you know, is honorable. It's beyond accusation with God. Plin, let's keep going. Plin itis per ergasi seto tis synodu tin prophasin. Yet, I think, nevertheless, if someone peri ergazome is the root here, so to be, it can be used negatively in the sense of being to overly interested in something, to be like a busybody, to inquire, to be inquisitive in a bad way. Here it seems to be a little bit more, you know, more positive theological, you know, in terms of theological reasoning. Nevertheless, if someone were curious, yeah, I said over curious here. That implies a more negative sense. We're looking into this with more curiosity, let's say. And what is this? What are they looking into here? The prophosing, the pretext, or the occasion. You know, the pretext of the synodos, the coming together, the marital union, right? He will find orexin evrisi sarkos. Now there's an ellipsis there. The text is corrupt, it seems. He will find evrisi orexin sarkos, a yearning of flesh. Okay. And then, yeah. So we're not sure. Oh, unless, yeah, Avtin, if Avtin is referring back to this. So a yearning, the very, or itself, you know, yearning itself for the flesh. Right? Con mi epaminite os amartia to dromenon. Even though the act itself, the drao again, the thing done, would not be. There's the on, the conditional would not be proven. I say, I have to look that up again to find the range of meaning, but would not be proven as sin. So, threading this needle, right? We'll talk about maybe next time, but so he's going to go on to say that the marital act is there's this kind of theological cloud that hangs over human sexuality, not because again we're not following the earlier comments, not because of any sort of Gnostic or Manichaean dualism, but rather because of informed by the scriptures themselves and the church's practice of with baptism, the sacramental life of the church, that there is this connection between human generation and the passing on of the principle of sin, the reality of sin and corruption and death. Right. So we'll come back and see that again. We'll spend a little bit more time on this. We finished this paragraph, but I was intending to. I kind of skipped over it, but put up to look at the rest of verse 7 there, or verse 5, depending on. Let's see what the. Okay, what's it coming up there? Let's go to Psalm 50, verse 7. Okay. Make sure this is visible. Good. All right. For behold, Idugar and Anomias, Sine Limpthin, or behold, in sins I was conceived. Ke and amartias, the same, the plural, dative plural, governed by the preposition, right? So we have transgressions and sins in the plural. Ekisisen me imiter mu. And in sins did my mother ekisisen me. Now look over here. I can see I think my picture might be blocking it out, but so this is what's called a hapax, right? A hapax legomena, used only once in the Septuagint. And if you want to prove it, let's see here. Hopefully right. Yep. This is the only usage of this verb in the Septuagint, which would of course include. So that would include as well the New Testament. So this is searching both New Testament and Septuagint, and then the broader Septuagintal canon. So interesting, this verb, not widely used, right? And the kind of basic root meaning given is to crave for strange food, vis-a-vis a pregnant woman, so or to long for something. So it's what shall we say? Not a. It has a. Sorry, here. The text wants to sneak through there. It has a. Maybe that's what's doing this. Sorry. Let's try that. If that helps. All right, there we go. It has a kind of, say, deep overtone to it. Kind of mixing metaphors there, deep overtone, but of relationship to sensual realities, let's say. So this craving. And then, of course, it's interesting that mother here is in the singular, imiter mu, right? So we move from a passive, I was conceived, to an active, my mother craved me. So it's just anticipating that article I mentioned, that essay, where this root is associated with, in St. Maximus, his discussion of this, with another important root, orgao, to swell, again, with the sense of sensual passion. So then tie this in with the recapitulation, the drama of Christ as recapitulating humanity born of a virgin, right, without any, not of the will of man or of the flesh, right? Thinking of John's Gospel. So Christ is, in his recreation of humanity, in his recapitulation, he restores all aspects of the human reality, human nature, bringing them back to their true intention and true desired shape, right? Their natural shape. And in that case, it shows us, this is the argument, right, that human sexuality currently, as we experience it, is a distorted reality. It's not evil, right? But it's also a bearer of the principles of sin and corruption and death. And so Christ being born of a virgin is what kind of is part and parcel of the restoration of all aspects of the human situation, including procreation, back to their original shape, in which men and women, male and female, were to be in communion with one another in a way that was not based in passion, right? Was not based in distorted desires that tend towards idolatry. That is philosarchias, that love of the flesh, right? Where we start to worship and love the part of the created order instead of the God who created those things. these aspects of our experience and reality in the sensible world become ends to themselves, and thus we give ourselves over to them and become enthralled in them. It becomes a form of idolatry, and so that. So there's that kind of this text again. I guess I'm just in a roundabout filling in the details of why this is such an important text and an important discussion. So when we are united with Christ in baptism, we undergo the death, our death in and with him. So we are taken out of the realm of necessity, right? We die in and with him and are born anew in the womb of the church. And thus we escape this pattern of necessity, that our true self now is no longer the self that was born of the will that, however even pious, but it was still rooted in passion and of our parents, right? Our natural birth. We escape that necessity and the corruption that came through our natural generation, and are born anew, dying in the waters of baptism with Christ, born freely without necessity in the womb of the church. So we emerge from the baptism waters in the body of Christ, in Christ himself, who is the new Adam, the true human, and thus are free now, right? From that in a way that just inaugurates the struggle, right? The ongoing struggle with the passions as we climb the ladder of ascent to union with God. But we do that now. Where Adam and Eve got tripped up, and St. Maximus will connect the fall with this text and human sensuality, and Eve, our mother, desiring, craving, in that sense, for sexual intimacy. We are freed. So we are raised in Christ into this new and true humanity. So I forgot I was going to say something else, but kind of lost my train of thought there. So very important, for understanding the church, why we do what we do, our understanding of human nature, and so we will continue on as we keep pressing on in St. Cyril's commentary here. And again, I hope this is of interest and benefit. Working through the Greek, really, just I think it's an enriching exercise, and I hope someone out there is benefiting from it. I hope to hear from someone too that I understand it's a commitment of time to try to work through these things, but if you benefit from this, let me know. And if you have any ideas of how it could be improved or what we could do, I welcome that. So wishing you a blessed rest of your Saturday, and we'll hopefully see you here next time. So take care.